Hi everyone, my name is Corinne Lebrun and I'm really excited to be with you here today to talk about the science of Kundalini. So the science behind Kundalini awakenings and where we are at in 2025. So the last time I looked at the scientific literature, there wasn't a lot out there. There were a few papers on some subjective experiences, but now there's actually a whole host. And what's beautiful is that it mirrors the experience that people have had. And also, my favorite, helps to debunk some spiritual paradigms which may not be serving us and our highest good. So if you think about it, any paradigm we get stuck in, whether it is self-defeating behavior or whether it's a mental construct of a spiritual phenomenon, you're limiting yourself. So that's why I say, let's take a look at what people's experiences actually are, and let's take a look at our own experiences of people around us, and let's see what we can find to really expand our consciousness. I recently found a study that was published in Explore, the Journal of Science and Healing, and I'll put the link in the chat. Really amazing stuff. So anyway, I wanted to talk to you about things that are close to my heart and things that they found in this study. So first off is about Kundalini and creativity. This is something I've always really felt viscerally and known that once this energy starts moving through you, the way to balance it is through creative practice, because that's what it's here for. That's certainly how it's manifested in my life. And some people that they found in the studies and things you've heard about in history have become savants all of a sudden have talents that they've never had in their lives. Pretty amazing stuff. But so what's cool is 70% of the participants of this study found they had creative bursts of inspiration. That is far more than the average human being. So there you go. So it's over 300 people for an average. That's pretty astounding. And what it describes is neural patterns that are a lot like flow state, but it's a little bit more than that. It's when your default mode network of your brain that keeps you stuck in like self-talk, it quiets down and you're able to really express yourself more freely, especially if you are in that ecstatic state. So it's not just mystical, it's your brain and body sinking into a creative coherence. Pretty cool stuff. So that's something I really love. So let's think about, does creativity and spiritual energy, let's call it spiritual energy because we don't have a real word for it yet, but I do believe it is electrical and biological. Would it have the same biological roots? Well, yeah, kind of makes sense, right? We're humans. And if we're tapping into non-local consciousness, which I really believe we all have, and we can get into that in another video, then of course it's from the same place. Pretty amazing. So let's debunk some myths here. I'm sorry if this ruffles some feathers because I know it might, but to really progress on our spiritual path, we got to be open-minded, right? I know I certainly had to learn the hard way. So get this one. I love this one. So everybody says Kundalini rises up from the base of the spine. Really? Is that true? Where did we learn this? I always go back. Where did we learn this? It says this in the ancient Vedic text that Carl Jung actually examined. And if you go back in the history, you'll find that that is how we ended up getting that information. But some of the other Vedic texts and also things written about Kundalini, they didn't call it that, of course, but in different cultures, did not necessarily say it's from the base of the spine. I mean, I know this throws things on top of, it completely uproots the whole phenomenon idea of what Kundalini is, but check this out. So 85% felt unusual flows of energy around the body, and not all of them said it rose up from the spine. Some people said it radiated from the heart, descended from above, and others it surrounded them completely. So it's really interesting. The serpent rising is certainly symbolic, and some people do experience it that way, but it is not the only way. And the reason it's so important to know this is because let's say you've had, I call them Kundalini expansions, a Kundalini expansion, you've had an altered state of consciousness. Your life is entirely different because let's say you now had this experience of true oneness, or true bliss that is not emotional, or a sudden expanded non-local state of consciousness. How do you explain that? And yet you might think, oh, that wasn't anything special because it wasn't a Kundalini awakening because it didn't come from the spine, base of the spine. It came from my heart. Well, I'm here to tell you it actually is Kundalini awakening, Kundalini expansion. Let's call them expansions because it's not abrupt for every person. So that is something I find amazing, because when I've had some of the Kundalini experiences I've had, and I've been very, very fortunate to have more than one. One of them was like so profoundly from the heart. It just was this expansive notion, like expansion of pure bliss from the heart. Another one came from, you call it the third eye, the base of the skull. And I had no framework at that time to really, I didn't even know what a Kundalini, what that word was when I was having these experiences. So my whole goal is I don't want people to limit themselves on their spiritual path to more peace and meaning in their lives by saying, to invalidate their experiences. I really want people to be empowered. That is my whole goal with this. So that is why I'm debunking this myth right now. So another question, is Kundalini dangerous? Oh, that's a good one. So is Kundalini energy dangerous? Well, I'm going to tell you, it depends on who you are. But if you are of sound mind and body, it is not dangerous. So these are also myths to be debunked. The only people in all these studies, and I love science mixed with spirituality to help us on our path, the only people that had issues are the ones that had pre-existing psychological issues. So the good news is, if you feel like you have issues suddenly, it's like, that's fixable. You don't have to stay in it. When things are sudden, it's a sudden awakening, what can happen is you do have to dig into your old unresolved trauma, because think about this. Your neural pathways are lit up in your brain. You are going to become more conscious of everything that you've been trying to suppress. I shouldn't even say you're not mentally trying. It's like the things that your subconscious is trying to keep from your consciousness so you can actually function in the world. When you suddenly have an enormous amount of electrical charge with Kundalini moving through your body, all those things you've been trying to repress, they're going to come up. You cannot hide from yourself anymore. That's what happens. So that's why, and a lot of the spiritual traditions, they highly recommend that you work on yourself first. Be grounded. Deal with your traumas, deal with your issues, deal with your wounds first before you go trying to expand this in a conscious manner, because it can be abrupt, and for some people who do have the sudden awakenings, where all of a sudden, like their whole universe is turned upside down. Like imagine a paradigm of someone who didn't even believe in psychic phenomenon, somebody who didn't even believe in expanded states of consciousness, all of a sudden was faced with, they just know things. All of a sudden they're faced with, being able to heal people. I mean, it doesn't make sense. And there's actually a word for it. I love when there's scientific words for these things. It's called ontological shock. And that is, it takes time for people to really integrate, like, oh, okay, this is what the world is really like. Oh my God. And it's very different than what they might have been brought up in. And that does create some dissonance. And thankfully there are many, I call it like there's spiritually based therapists who've been trained in spiritual integration. And that's where people can really find help with that. So those are the rare cases. But more often, Kundalini energy expands because it's already there. It just takes a sudden, I call it electron leap. And suddenly there's a far more expanded state of consciousness where people have the most beautiful experiences to help them really on their spiritual path and truly be in touch with their soul. So, and it's not like so shocking within their world paradigm, because they're able to integrate it into things they already knew, but they just didn't maybe not 100% believe. So anyway, so that is all I have to say about, is Kundalini dangerous? So depending on what religion you belong to, it can seem like, oh my God, like what the heck is this? And across every single religion, people talk about ecstatic states. Think about, with Christianity, the ecstatic states that the saints would go into, the ecstatic states of the Sufis, that's like across every religion, these ecstatic states is this electromagnetic energy that we call Kundalini energy, because it is so much more than we can even begin to fathom when we tap into our non-local consciousness, or some people would call it the God self, right? But one that is actually connected to the greater source of the universe. So anyway, that is that piece. So the next piece I actually want to talk about here is psychic and subtle sensitivity, things that actually happen with Kundalini awakenings. This is really phenomenal. You would think that, oh, maybe this is just a bunch of, what is that word? It's like hocus pocus. It's just confirmation bias. But get this, 2/3 of the 300 people in this particular study actually reported psychic and subtle energy sensitivity in the way they had not before. Meaning, for example, you can be around someone and you're like, whoa, I actually feel their energy field. That is fascinating. That happens to me. And as time has gone on, it gets more and more refined and more pronounced. It's pretty cool. It doesn't mean I'm disempowered. It doesn't mean anyone has to be disempowered by that ability. It's more that by like, oh, now we're too sensitive to be out in the world. No, that's a whole other subject. No, it's more like you now have an extra arm, I like to look at it, or an extra limb, an extra sense that you just need to care for. That's all it is. So yeah, but look at this. This is what's exciting. It's 75% of people. It's phenomenal. So anyway, they have a heightened sense of perception of brain and body picking things up on subtler cues. So it's sensing other people's emotions, energy fields, and just their awareness widens in the bandwidth. So it's actually super, super amazing. I just absolutely love this stuff. So let's see, is there anything else for this particular thing I wanted to say? Yeah. Oh yeah, some people become far more empathic, really sensing and feeling other people's memory. I do talk a lot about this in one of the courses I put together, but this is where people also like, oh, I'm spiritually expanded, now I'm an empath, and now I feel disempowered. Well, or now I am so sensitive it's hard to be around things. I went through all that, and what I learned was very interesting. And I learned it from my Kundalini yoga teacher training. I learned it from going to the Berkeley Psychic School, because I went to try to learn how to deal with the psychicness. It was really funny. And also I learned from my martial arts training that the key is you learn to strengthen your own energy field. That's it. It's actually so simple, because I sat there and I wondered, I was like, how is it that some of these martial arts masters that I know and have personally met that have been pretty amazing at their abilities, how is it that they never, ever complain about being too energetically sensitive to do anything? I couldn't figure it out. I was like, how can someone literally like throw someone across a room with their energy? And I've literally seen this with my own eyes, and it was quite phenomenal in a small closed space. I was like, but they never complain about this stuff. And I realized it's because, so I learned from them as well, of course. I learned it's about strengthening the energy over your solar plexus. Now you could say this has to do with strengthening your own sense of identity, which is very important. Like you have to anchor into who are you and who's the other person. And actually I just went to a class this last weekend. It was on mediumship and remote viewing. Super, super fascinating. But it was so interesting. The part of the medium training that people go through is that they learn how to discern their own energy as opposed to other people's energy, because then you can tell what's yours and someone else's. And I never realized, all of my training has really helped me do that. I don't plan on becoming a medium. I just like to always explore different things to see what resonates, right? But I was like, wow, even as a medium, you have to know how to do this. So it's a practice. When you can start to feel what is my energy, what is someone else's energy, then you become a lot better at not picking up other people's energy fields not being influenced by their emotion, you're far more able to hold space for people, and have them, just do a whole emotional dump, and you're just like, you're fine. By the end of it, you can be of service. You can really be of service that way. It's so cool. So so anyway, my whole point is find things that will strengthen your field. And things that I know that really work for me are even exercising at the gym, dancing, doing martial arts, because that really actually expands your field over your solar plexus, your dantian, you can call it your third chakra. Exercises in Kundalini yoga that actually help to expand the energy field over your third chakra. Those work miracles for me, really, really, truly. So anyway, just wanted to share all that with you today. There will be more because I have so much more to share on this, and I'm so excited because this way, the more we know, the more empowered we can be, and the more we can really vibrate that true, just love and calm in the world, which we all are in our essence. So anyway, till the next one.